honored and feel deeply privileged to be asked to join you for this meeting of the Global Sustainable Technology and Innovation Community. The theme that you are addressing in this 7th meeting, I believe, is accelerating technologies, solutions for the SDGs. On my way to this distinguished gathering, I was reflecting on how long this journey has been. I remember I was a young first secretary to the Indian delegation to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, which was the predecessor of the World Trade Organization in Geneva, when the Secretary General of the UN, I think it was in 1983, set up what came to be known as the Brundtland Commission. That was the World Commission on Environment and Development. And lo and behold, who was the secretary of that commission? This gentleman sitting on my left, who's had such a distinguished career in this area of development. So I'm very pleased to be here. Mr. Ambassador, Nitinji, Anshumanji, friends from here, and those who are visiting us from other countries. I was thinking how I would spend the time allotted to me to share with you what India has done precisely in the area which you are addressing, that is technological solutions. And during an 8-year period, during which I've had the privilege of being a member of the Council of Ministers and the Cabinet, I thought I would pick a few areas which are immediately, I would think, they are replicable in terms of scale in the global south as practical solutions of what we are doing. In order to do some context setting, let me share some startling facts with you. Our population is about 1.4 billion. Our daily consumption of crude oil for our refineries, where products like petrol, diesel, etc. are refined, our daily consumption is about 5.4 million barrels in a day. I continue to be known by the title of Minister for Petroleum and Natural Gas, but I would submit to all of you that after I have shared with you our experience, I think I should be called the Minister for Green Energy Transition. Now, there is no escaping the fact that there is a requirement, and it's an imperative in democratic societies. And I was thinking on my way here, is energy transition easier in democratic societies, or is it more difficult? Does democracy also place a cost? And I don't think the answer is available. The jury is still out on that. But what I can share with you is, no democratically elected government, whether it is in Brazil, India, or any other part of the world, and I'm mentioning Brazil because I had the privilege of serving as ambassador there, and much of my biofuels experience owes its origins to my Brazilian experience. No democratically elected government can afford to neglect, in today's day and age, the trilemma of availability, affordability, and sustainability. Insofar as availability is concerned, let me tell you the Indian part of the equation. Our demand is growing at 3 times the global average. And the International Energy Agency, which is based in Paris, had estimated some time ago, now I find all other international entities studying this subject, saying that in the next 2 decades, 25% of the increase in demand will come from India. Affordability, it's very easy to do research, and I'm not diminishing the importance of the research, in a laboratory setting and say we produced a green solution. We are doing that also. Yesterday, the Prime Minister of Bhutan was here, and I had the privilege of accompanying him for a ride on a bus which is based on a fuel cell or green hydrogen. This was research done in India. The platform has been manufactured by Tata Motors, but that's not by itself the thing. But at the Indian Oil facility, I think on the outskirts of Delhi, they produce this green hydrogen. The bus just now has an endurance of, if I'm not mistaken, 300 kilometers. And all that it produces by way of emission is water vapor. We have 15 of those buses plying. Those buses are plying because they are still at the demonstration stage before they start operating. But we plan to increase the number. We plan to get that green hydrogen story out in the market. And I'm mentioning green hydrogen up front because the ambassador mentioned collaboration in the area of green hydrogen. I think you mentioned near Kakinada. And I'll come to green hydrogen development in a few minutes. But very briefly, our biofuel story. When I had the privilege of being assigned to Brazil, I'm talking about the year 2006, the then government in Delhi tried very hard to ensure that there was 5% blending in 10 of our states and union territories. At the end of 2014, when Mr. Modi assumed responsibility, the total blending mix was only about 1.5% or so. The Prime Minister set a target of 10% blending by November 2022. We achieved that target 5 months in advance. He then set a target of 20% blending by 2030. We brought the target forward. We are going to complete 20% blending by October of 2025. That is our ethanol blending year. Ethanol blending is no longer a question mark in India. Last month, I think, I read a slightly silly story in the press yesterday where my friends in the press keep us on notice and I have fun with them. Well, you know, they were supposed to do 16%. They've only done 15.9%. Oh, okay, fine. Next month, we'll do 2% extra, okay? But today, no one who is in anyone questions that India is on target to doing 20% blending. I was in Brazil recently and I was thrilled to hear that their basic feed coming to the bunk every day will move from 27% blend to 35% blend. So somebody asked me, what is your plan? I said, when we complete 20%, obviously we'll think of going forward. But we are already starting the discussion on what a post 20% blend roadmap will look like. And we set up, during the Indian presidency of the G20, we set up a global biofuels alliance. And I was thrilled to find, even before that alliance really takes off, because it just started, we have, I think, 26 countries, members, and all the international organizations. But I already find Indian companies setting up 4 plants for the manufacture of ethanol in Brazil. Now that, in the English language, would sound like taking coal to Newcastle. But when I asked, it made sense, because the Brazilian experience is essentially sugarcane-based or sugar-based. Whereas we are making it from maize here also. I mean, when we had a problem on sugar, we went from 0 to 39% on maize. So we are now also making second generation ethanol from agricultural waste, from bamboo. So it's a fantastic story. Why I'm relaying this to you is because when you talk about accelerating technologies and solution, this is what practical technologies and solutions is. I want to come briefly to one major area which has a very strong health connection is the kind of cooking medium you use. Now, large parts of the global south don't have LPG or liquefied petroleum gas for a variety of reasons. If you don't have a refinery, where are you going to get the LPG from? You're going to have to import the LPG. And therefore, regrettably, and this I think is one of the major failings of our collective effort, that primary need of our sisters and our people in large number of countries has not been addressed. So I'll give you the example of an entrepreneur from Ahmedabad in the state of Gujarat. He found that one country in Africa had this problem and people were still using kerosene or wet wood or coal. So he decided to manufacture and export 1 million cooktops for the kitchen. And he decided to import 93-octane ethanol from Brazil. And it's a great success story. Now, I see no reason why the ethanol story or the biofuel story cannot be extended to large portions of the global south, especially as we move away from fossil fuels and make the transition. Because by no definition, by anyone, are biofuels anything but green. And for us, you see, unlike countries like the United States and Brazil, where there is a superabundance of land, Brazil has 3 times India's land area and 1/6 our population, and 22% of the world's freshwater reserves. We don't have that luxury. So when we move to biofuels, we are also saving on the import bill. And our import bill, I just calculated the other day and put out something yesterday, about $20 billion on import. And we give that to our agricultural community. So it works both for energy transition and it works also for the agricultural economy. Now I want to come to this cooking fuels. In the year 2014, when the Honorable Prime Minister assumed responsibility, the total number of cylinder connections in India was 140 million. In the last 10 years, it has gone up from 140 million to 330 million. Now, if you take India's population at 1.4 billion, and also note that a cylinder connection is not for one person, it's for a household. And if every household typically has 4 or 5 people in a family, you virtually saturated the entire population. Virtually. I'm not saying all because there are people still left out. Then in 2016, we started a scheme called Ujjwala, wherein, based on I think 8 or 9 indices, we identified sections of the population which would qualify either as economically weaker sections or below the poverty line. And we decided to introduce a scheme whereby the government would subsidize a cylinder for use by those families. The scheme started in 2016. I think the day the Prime Minister went for the Ayodhya temple, on that day, I think some 10 crore 33 lakhs, which is 100 million plus connection was issued. Now, it's not just providing clean cooking fuel. It's also the cost at which you provide it. We did a calculation that the beneficiaries of the Ujjwala scheme receive clean cooking fuel at the cost of something like 5 cents in a day. Now, that's also one of the big things about the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not saying this, but keep at the background, we've been able to lift 250 million people out of multidimensional poverty in the last 10 years. If you are providing clean cooking fuel to a family which qualifies under the economically weaker section for 5 cents in a day, and the family is also receiving 3 meals of dry ration, which was started during the COVID pandemic, but is still continuing, then you're helping meet the requirements of that section. And also those who are not beneficiaries of the Ujjwala scheme, we calculated that it costs something like 14 or 15 cents to receive. So these are, by any yardstick, anywhere in the world, these are very reasonable rates, as a result of which, and of course I won't go into details, you all are going to be more familiar. The WHO calculated what the benefit in terms of money saving, health of our women, household workers, etc. So all that is all statistics out in the public domain. I want to come very briefly to the green hydrogen story. So we've done very well on biofuels, very well. I mean, I'm not doing self-congratulations, but the fact is we started at 1.5%. We're going to be at 20% next year, and we're already talking about what a post-20% blending roadmap would look like. We have started internal discussions. Another area which I should briefly mention is the entire issue of aviation turbine fuel. And I think there's a lot of global discussion going on sustainable aviation fuel. Again, if you look at the research which is being done, I know a lot of work is being done in the Nordics, in Nordic countries and other, but at the end of the day, the sustainable aviation fuel story will succeed because countries like the United States, Brazil, India, which have biomass and which have the geographical coordinates, climate coordinates required in order to do that. On my own, once we had brought in a flight from Pune to Delhi, I think it was an AirAsia flight, using 1% SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. When I saw the enthusiasm there, I said, we are going to do 1% blending by 27, 2% by 2028, and 3% by 2029. Somebody later asked me, where did you get that from? I said, from the top of my hat. Because if you see what is happening and you start a narrative that you're going to do it, then the economic actors start going in that direction. And lo and behold, a few months later, I said the European Union was going to look at the possibility of a 5% mandate for sustainable aviation fuel. And believe me, when you start sustainable aviation fuel, you need a lot of it. Well, at 1% blend, I had done a calculation, we did about 140 million liters. If at those current levels we had done a 1% blend, that is when 2022 or 23, when we did the flight, we would require another 140 million liters of sustainable aviation fuel. And Indian civil aviation is growing faster than ever before and by global standards. So the amount of sustainable aviation fuel we are required. Now you're able to do some things you have a climatic advantage. Like if you're a seaweed producer, the seaweed in this climate grows back after 6 weeks. I'm not going into the technicalities on what you can do and what you cannot do. But I think when you talk about accelerating technologies and solutions, these are the areas. I want to come fast forward to green hydrogen. Those of you who are familiar with the green hydrogen debate, of course, know what you require is an ability to produce reasonably priced, clean solar energy at a low cost. We have demonstrated that we can bring the cost down from 25 cents a megawatt to 3 cents. We've done it. And on top of that, you require electrolyzers. The ambassador was referring to that. Why will green hydrogen succeed in India? Because the gas by itself does not lend itself to transportation. So you require local demand, you require local production, and you require local consumption. So this Kakinada facility the ambassador was referring to, I think had Greenco involved in it, yeah. So the same company, when I was checking, same company has throughout the Indian coastline facilities, typically 3,000 acres, where they take water up to a height of what, 2,500 feet or something, drop it, produce green energy, and then they have these pump storage sites. As a result of which, solar energy you can only get when the sun is out, but these pump storage sites solve that problem. Today, I can say with confidence, because I think the wet testing has already been done on that pump storage facility, so it's been done. We've proved it can be done. The real name of the game in green hydrogen is to bring the cost of production down. When I joined the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, I'm talking about, I think, 3 years ago, July, 3 years plus ago, July of 2021, my first interaction was with the US Secretary, Jennifer Granholm. And she said her target is to have 1 for 1 for 1, which means 1 kilo of green hydrogen for $1 in 10 years. I mean, that is the trajectory to get there. I have a lot of entrepreneurs from all over the world who come and meet me and try to impress me that they've been able to bring the cost of green hydrogen down. I'm very encouraging to them, and I don't believe half of what they tell me. Because I genuinely believe the cost is still around $5.5 per kilo. This is my view. So all this business about we brought it down to $3, I'd say, well, do that and you're ready for the biggest award the world can think. Because I'll tell you, I'm going to fast forward and put this very simply. My country's import bill on traditional energy is about $150 billion in a year. Now just imagine if that cost were to come down from say $5 or $5.5 to $2.5, $3, I am 100% sure this community sitting here, all the activists in Terry and everywhere else, they would mount a massive campaign saying instead of spending $150 billion there, put that into support for green hydrogen. Won't that happen? 100% will happen. So, I actually have a vested interest in talking more about green hydrogen because now you have fantastic innovation taking place. The other day, a youngster came to see me along with a venture capitalist, and that venture capitalist told me that out of the 100 or so unicorns in India, he and his friends had supported, 40 of them? And this young man was telling me what he's doing in producing an electrolyzer without a membrane. Now, I went to Germany, I go elsewhere, I've been to Siemens, I've been to European facilities. Again, I come back to one basic story. Technology is essential. Technology has to be scaled up, but you will not be able to do it in every country in the world because it's not worth the economics. Yes, you can produce green ammonia and export the green ammonia. I mean, a lot of these companies, including the one we named, they are making green ammonia for export to Unipar in Germany. They've signed an MOU. How do I know? Because I was made to sit in with the Singaporean minister. They've signed an MOU to produce green ammonia here, which will go into the new General Electric plant for electricity, which is being set up in that you can do. But you can't take the green hydrogen. The green hydrogen has to be used on an as-is, where-is basis. And I can think of no country, I can think of many countries using green hydrogen, including many of you sitting here, Nigeria, Brazil, many countries. But you need local demand for green hydrogen to be, produced and consumed there. And of course, there is a certain investment, which is that. The investment has to, anybody who's making the investment is not doing it out of altruism or philanthropy. He's going to do it because there has to be a return on it. And I see that happening. So my personal take on this is that the 5 million metric tons per annum target that we set for ourselves in 2030 is a gross underestimation. Once the first tender goes out in the refinery which is going to be using green hydrogen, And I used to joke with my colleague in the cabinet, the then Minister of Power. I said, you can go on assuming green hydrogen is going to be used everywhere. It'll be used in power generation, it'll be used in electricity, it'll be used in steel, it'll be used in wherever. But green hydrogen in India will succeed when the refineries start using it in a big way, because that's where the scale is going to come from. I have now more than taken up much more the time than I had intended to. I'll just quickly wind up by saying these solutions, the kind of work you are doing, are absolutely necessary. Terry, the host for this organization, I've had the privilege of being associated with it from right since the time of its inception. It had some very tall leaders, my friend Mr. Pachauri, all the others. We worked very closely with them. I was ambassador in Geneva when the elections in 2002 were fought for the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So I've seen this whole thing grow. I want to welcome all of you to Delhi for this meeting, and I hope your visit here, and I don't know where you all are based in Brussels or elsewhere, will provide you some small insights into what we are doing in the areas where this thing. I could go on and on. I was 7 years Housing and Urban Affairs Minister, as my friend, the Additional Secretary, whom we are having in next session. We're doing a lot on transition there. Since I saw her, I couldn't resist. My boss came to the conclusion very early, and I had a 7-year tenure there. He said, you will be able to deal with it on transportation, etc. But what about the toxicity which is produced as a result of the building practices? So he declared one full year as the construction technology challenge year. And he invited, or rather we invited, all the companies in the world, all the companies, we issued an invitation. Please come and participate in this technology challenge process. And many of them came, a lot of them came. And we showcased their technologies. And then, out of that, we shortlisted 53 technologies. Tara, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm already dated. 53 technologies we shortlisted. And we told our CPWD and others to start using them. Then we had a challenge between those 53, and we chose 6 of them to produce what we call the 6 lighthouse projects, that each of the winners would have to use one of those technologies to produce 1,000 units of residential units in 1 year. And I think the use of technology came in. I remember we were asked by the Honorable Prime Minister to make a presentation. So I thought everything looked good, till I got a message saying that he doesn't want the presentation is all right, but he wants the sites to be shown on real-time technology, which meant meant satellite imagery and drones. Because then, earlier we used to have the situation on paper, projects got built, and they remained on paper, and then they said, oh, the floods came in the winter. Here you could see every worker, every brick, every truck. And then my last example is we are doing the smart cities. We have gone, and this I think is one of our biggest achievements, which somehow we don't talk about enough. When the Prime Minister took office in 2014, only 14 or 15% of the urban waste that we produced was reprocessed. Only 14-15%. I was shocked when I became minister. I said we have to ramp it up. Today we are doing about 76% or so, and I think we've got blueprints for making it 100%. So today our emphasis is on the legacy dump sites, taking it all away. But we are using that waste to make energy. The Prime Minister is already talking about using urban waste for centralized plants, etc. So there's a lot of work which is taking place here. I don't know if you all have the time, although it's not wrong, it will not correct for me to give the explanation, invitation, but I'm confident my colleague who heads that ministry now, we have something called an urban observatory in Nirman Bhavan, where on the top floor you have every project which is going on in the country available for information. Ambassador, I'd like you and others also should invite the diplomatic corps also. See the change that has come. So we are actually using technology, green solutions, and if you can build 1,000 units, we're using the most green technology in a year, then it's a question of only that sinking into the others. Sorry I've taken more time, but thank you very much.